Hi everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to talk about Esper Legends and how to sideboard against the top 10 most popular decks in Standard. Esper Legends is an extremely powerful deck where you play creatures that are just awesome individually and even better together and aggro your opponent out, with also an extremely powerful long game. And sometimes it's hard to sideboard with a deck that has so much synergy in the main deck, but let's talk about how we do that. Hopefully you'll be able to use the lessons you got in learning how to sideboard with the top 10 most popular decks against the other decks in Standard. Let's jump into it. The most popular deck in Standard is red-black midrange. Most red-black midrange decks also do silly Atraxa stuff alongside the red-black midrangey things. Some don't though. Luckily, we're going to sideboard really similarly for both. So we're going to sideboard in 2 Disdainful Stroke. Disdainful Stroke is really good against Invoke Despair, but also can snipe Shieldred or Arcane of the Dross or Cruelty of Gix if they are playing that version. You're going to do Siding and Negate for all of those same reasons. It hits everything except for the creatures, but also Negate can hit Fable, which feels really, really good. We're going to be siding in 3 Wedding Announcement. It's a super resilient threat that they have a lot of difficulty with. We're going to be siding in Surge of Salvation. Surge of Salvation is really solid against their removal spells. It makes us less soft to Brotherhood's End. If they're playing the Cruelty of Gix version, it allows us to not be Thoughtseized or be targeted by Liliana of the Veil. And then I really like Razor Lash, Transmogrant. They're looking to go pretty long, and I don't want to go really long. So Razor Lash allows us to be a little bit more aggressive, and it also feels really bad for them to dump a removal spell on Razor Lash because we can bring it back later. And we're going to be looking to sideboard out of things that don't give a lot of value on its surface, like right when we play it, or things that are not difficult to remove. So first off, we're going to take out Shieldred because Shieldred is very easy for our opponents to remove. I'm also not a fan of Adeleine because they can just remove it and it hasn't done any true damage. And we're going to shave on to Rona. Rona's just one of those cards that, while it's really good over time if it's not answered, if it's answered, it hasn't really done anything yet. And it's actually very, very easy for our opponent to answer. But we're going to leave one of those Rona in because over time, it can actually do a really good job digging us out of bad situations and keeping up with their opponent's value that they're generating. So this is our sideboard against red-black midrange. Grixis midrange, we're going to be sideboarding very slightly different. Mostly because most Grixis midrange decks don't actually run Invoke Despair. Thus, we're not going to be playing Disdainful Stroke, but we're still going to be playing Negate because it can hit a lot of relevant spells in these decks, including Fable or any removal spells. Speaking of counter and removal spells, of course, we're bringing in Surge of Salvation for the same reasons, Wedding Announcements for the same reasons as the last sideboard, and same thing with Razor Lash Transmogrant. We're going to be siding out of Shieldred for the same reasons. We're going to be siding out of Adeleine for the same reasons, and that is a much cleaner sideboard, specifically against Grixis midrange. The third most popular deck is Mono White midrange. Mono White midrange is a little less low to the ground than the black-based midrange decks. It is much more focused on their planeswalkers and board wipes and enchantment-based removal, which is why we're bringing in Lauren of the Third Path, which is very good. We're bringing in Wedding Announcement again because these matchups go very, very long and is very strong against them. Bringing in Disdainful Stroke because most of the stuff that we're afraid of costs 4 or more. Bringing in Negate for this removal, for Farewells, for these planeswalkers, all very good against them. And here is where we really, really, really want to be the aggressive deck and understand that a lot of their removal is exile removal. Understanding that, Tola's is actually not very good because it's when it dies, we put the exile cards into our owner's hand, and they rarely have, death removal. We're going to be bringing out Ao the Dawnsky for the same reason. And I actually don't like Go for the Throat against this deck. It's very good in certain scenarios, like with Sarah Paragon, but most of the stuff that we're really afraid of are planeswalkers, and I'm okay with attacking through their creatures in situations that are just bad for them. That being said, I kind of want to shave on Shieldred because just like the black midrange decks, it's pretty easy for them to answer Shieldred. And so this is how I sideboard against Mono White midrange. The fourth most popular deck is the Mirror Match. And so in the Mirror Match, we are bringing in 4 cutdowns. Because we were trying to kill their creatures, and Cutdown actually hits nearly all the creatures in our opponent's deck. And weirdly enough, I actually think we're a little built for the mirror too. I like Razor Lash just to get a little bit lower to the ground. And we're going to be taking out Thalia, Garden of Thraben, because Thalia doesn't really get rid of anything in our opponent's deck. And we're going to take out an AO because, I want to get closer to the ground. I'd rather play a Razor Lash than an AO. And this is how I sideboard in the Mirror Match. The fifth most popular deck in Standard is Mono Red Aggro. It's a very classic Mono Red Aggro deck, creatures and burn spells, so we're going to be siding in Surge of Salvation to kind of stop that damage that is dealt, especially since if they lead with a burn spell, or you can do it in response to a burn spell, or really on your opponent's upkeep or something like that to make them not be able to deal damage to you at all that turn, which is really, really disgusting. We're bringing in the cutdowns to be able to deal with the opponent's creatures. And then we're looking to be a little less mid-range and a little bit lower to the ground. I don't like AO against the deck. I don't really want them drawing extra cards after I answer them, so we're bringing out Airtie. And I want to be able to block with everything, so I actually don't like Skrelv against the deck. So this is how I sideboard against mono red aggro. The 6th most popular deck is Esper midrange, which is the same thing as Esper Legends, except plays main deck wedding announcement. You're going to sideboard in the same way as you do against Esper Legends. We're just going to move on. Again, I'm using MTG Goldfish. They sort things weird. But the 7th most popular deck is Rakdos Reanimator. So we're going to do a lot of the same Rakdos midrange stuff, but also really focus on this reanimation thing. Specifically, we're going to bring in Disdainful Strokes and Negates to make sure we get rid of Cruelty of Gix. And Disdainful Stroke can stop things like Junji or other things that we might be afraid of. I like Surge of Salvation for the same reason we like it against Red, Black, and Grixis. We like Wayne Announcement for the same reason against that and Grixis. And Razor Lash Transmogrant. And we're going to be siding out of a lot of the same cards because they have a lot of the same answers as Red Black does. Shieldred comes out, Adeleine comes out, and Rona comes out. Which I guess, now that I look at it, it looks like, I think it's actually the same sideboard as the other deck. Danik is our MVP here in making sure they can't target things in their graveyard. And Go for the Throat is also super good. And after they finally do the thing, you're able to remove them and be able to attack through it. Skrelv is also great because it means you can attack through Junji without them reanimating. That's how I sideboard against Rakdos Reanimator. The 8th most popular deck is Mono Blue Tempo, where they play Haughty Djinn and Tolarian Terror and a bunch of counterspells, and it's miserable. We're playing Negate, which is just generally very strong against them, and Razor Lash Transmogrant. Just want things that are really hard to answer, and we're trying to get as low to the ground as possible to be able to bleat this Mono Blue deck, because we don't really want to be blown out by counterspells. That being said, I do not like AO. And we're going to shave on Atolas because it's not as aggressive as Adeleine. We really want Shieldred because they draw cards. We really want Airtie because we can play at instant speed. And Tolas, there's not really things dying in this deck. They're mostly countering and returning things to your hand. So Tolas is kind of medium. So it's sideboard against Mono Blue. The 9th most popular deck is Selesnya Poison. Against Selesnya Poison, we are bringing in the 4 cutdowns to be able to just deal with their creatures. We're bringing in the Lorens to be able to deal with like Skrelv's Hive and Skrelv itself, actually, now that I think about it. And Annex Sentry. There's a lot of things. And because they're an aggressive deck, we're trying to get lower to the ground to be able to block their creatures and do the thing. So we're taking out AO. We're not really playing the mid-range game, so we're taking out Tolas. And the game will unlikely to go long, so I actually don't like Rona very much. So this is how we're going to sideboard against Selesnya Toxic. And the 10th most popular deck and final deck that we're going to talk about is Jund Midrange, and we're going to be sideboarding against them the same way we do against the Red, Black, and Grixis midrange decks for all of the same reasons, because it's very, very similar. They're just playing Unleash the Inferno, which is another Jund removal spell, and they're playing Glissa. It doesn't really change our strategy like at all, especially since they play Invoke Despair and that Unleash the Inferno, so it makes Disdainful Stroke and Negate even better. And so we're taking out these cards just like we do against the other decks. Boom. So I sideboard against Jund midrange. So if you liked this video, if you did, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.